Well, hello everyone. Welcome to MTZCAST Episode 14. I'm Ben Winslet with MarchToZion.com, coming to you from Huntsville, Alabama. So it's been a little while since we've produced an MTZCast. I promised that when we took the little break over Christmas that I'd be producing these every couple of weeks. I'm sorry. Life being what it is, this is the project that always gets pushed to the back burner. But with everything that happened yesterday, I did want to take just a few minutes to come to you and speak to you about namely the abortion ruling. And, I live in Huntsville, Alabama, and I'm the pastor of a Baptist church here, a primitive Baptist church here in Huntsville, Alabama. Alabama right now is ground zero for the abortion battle. And so we'll get to that in just a moment. But because of it being in Alabama, I thought it would be a very good thing to produce a video, another episode of MTZCast. Now, we're going to be looking today, just briefly, at the culture war that is just absolutely raging around us in our country today. And so we've entitled this, The Culture War Rages. The first thing that we want to consider is the latest push by those in Hollywood concerning the normalization of homosexual behavior, the desire to represent homosexuality, homosexual marriage, homosexual dating, whatever, in popular media as normal as it can be. And it's to the point where it's almost absurd. I mean, the way the homosexual lobby wants it today, there would have to be, for the number of gay characters and gay references in TV, there would have to be a gay person every 3 or 4 people, and obviously that's not the case. Little girls don't grow up dreaming of marrying a princess. They grow up dreaming of marrying Prince Charming, and little boys don't grow up desiring to marry another dude. That's just not the case. It just isn't the way that it is. We all can sympathize for that, and in our country, in our day and age today, people are wanting to recruit others to this at a young age, and they're targeting people, and they're picking the weak out of the flock, as it were, and indoctrinating them with this. It's glorified, and when something's glorified, it's going to be appealing to people. Back when my brother was in high school, right before he graduated, it became almost a fad among a certain group there at the school, and several people claimed to be gay or bisexual, and it was simply because it was what other people were doing. And that, to me, is a large part of why that is so normal today. Scripture is very clear. This all boils down to people burning in their lust, in inordinate affection, in rebellion to God. This comes from the sinful nature that we all have. The same sin that makes a man burn with lust for another man is the same sin that makes the large majority of men burn with lust towards other women. It's sin. Sin is sin is sin. And whether it's fornication or whether it's anger or whether it's homosexuality, the root of that in a person is sin. But man, they are absolutely trying to recruit. They are trying to convert your children. And the more normal they make it seem like, the more likely people are to experiment in that. And then the next thing you know, the bells have been rung that cannot be unrung. Anyways, we consider the homosexual agenda today. I intended to do an MTZcast last week about this. I recently watched Avengers Endgame, and I'm a huge Marvel fan. You can see the Iron Man plaque back there. I think one of the MTZcasts from last year is wearing a Captain America shirt. I'm a huge Marvel fan. Watching Endgame, it's early in the movie, and Captain America's leading a support group of sorts for people who have to move on. If you've seen Infinity War, you know that the giant supervillain Thanos, the Mad Titan, he gathers all the Infinity Stones into a magical gauntlet. He snaps his finger, and half the living creatures in the universe are obliterated. They're turned to dust. They just turn to what looks like ash and just kind of blows off into the wind. Well, Captain America is leading a support group about this, and if you haven't watched this, this is a spoiler, but not one that you'll be terribly disappointed in. And he's speaking to a character that's actually played by one of the Russos who directed the film, and he's talking about moving on and finding, another mate and dating after some 5 years, I suppose, after the snap. And then the man begins describing his date as a him. And I'm like, wow, really? Really? The universe has half its population obliterated, and Marvel is going to... The only new relationship being discussed in the plot line up until now is a man who's dating another man. Now just think about that from pragmatism. Half the population's gone, but you're going to date a dude. Oh, that makes sense. Sounds like that's a good way to rebuild the human race. The absurdity of that. But it doesn't matter how absurd it is, because it's their agenda. Now, this isn't a thing of hate. It's just a simple matter of this is what God says, that men and women marry and have children, and there are roles for the man and the woman, but those are all subjects for another day. The point is that in that movie, that everyone on planet Earth, except for your great-grandma, Saul, every single person was exposed to poor little guy who, has to move on and find a new spouse, and the spouse or the friend is a he and a him, and it's just Hollywood attempt to glorify that, and it ultimately is a slap in the face to God. But it gets worse than that. So later in the week, or I suppose earlier this week, you get on the morning, you scroll through Facebook, and get on the computer in the morning, scroll through Facebook, and lo and behold, it hits all of the media outlets that the children's show that's on a PBS station, public broadcasting system station, PBS Kids, one of the characters on the show Arthur, in the season premiere for its, I think, 22nd season, marries someone special, that someone special being another male. And pulling up the New York Times article here, Mr. Ratburn, I don't watch Arthur, okay, so I don't know these characters. My children don't watch Arthur, not because I have anything against PBS, but because it's a really lame TV show. So, Ben, why don't your kids watch Arthur? Because it's lame. We're over there dressed like Spider-Man and Captain Marvel in the movie theater watching Endgame and Infinity War. We're carrying toy lightsabers watching Star Wars. We're not watching Arthur. But there's a character in there, Mr. Ratburn, and he ties the knot with Patrick, a local chocolatier, at a wedding attended by the students. Mr. Ratburn is married. I still can't believe it, Arthur says. Yep, it's a brand new world, Francine responds. This is intended to convert your children. What a shame this is, because you and I fund this. This is PBS. This isn't, ABC Family, private corporation, that's bad enough. Don't even get me started on HBO. Don't even get me started on Cinemax. Don't get me started on any of these other channels. This is PBS. You're funding that. I'm funding that. What is that? It's the culture war. So, with all of this blazing in the background, the culture war ramps up to a whole new level as early in the week, the Alabama Senate, my Senate, passed legislation that effectively bans abortion in the state of Alabama. Not only does it ban overwhelmingly most abortions, except if the mother's life is at risk, genuinely, truly at risk. And under that umbrella, you have things such as tubal pregnancies, that if you're unfamiliar with that, you can Google that. I won't waste the time to talk to you about it, but it's where a pregnancy develops outside of the uterus where the baby can actually survive, and it's a risk. The child will not survive outside of the womb, and the mother, it's a risk to her life as well. So with those being the only exceptions, abortion, once this goes into play, will be illegal in the state of Alabama. And according to that law, beyond simply making it illegal in the state of Alabama, it is a felony for a doctor to perform an abortion. So, again, a felony, up to 99 years punishable for a doctor to perform an abortion. There was some speculation, is Governor Kay Ivey going to sign this bill? And I'm going to tell you, I was worried. I was very worried, because politicians say what they have to say to get elected. If you notice, when Kavanaugh was nominated for the Supreme Court, all of a sudden the language from Republican politicians changed from pro-life, anti-abortion rhetoric to rhetoric that heavily used the word precedent. Precedent. What is precedent? That is existing precedent, existing law, existing case law, existing rulings. And so when I heard that, I knew that a lot of these Republicans who run on a pro-life platform, when they actually get the opportunity to end abortion, they don't end abortion. In fact, a lot of people, we have such a foggy, vague history, a memory of American history, political history. You know, black folks think that it was the Democrats that ended slavery, but it wasn't. It was the Republicans. Republicans, because Democrats now largely support abortion, we got to think that, you know, that those Democrats on the Supreme Court, but it was a Republican majority Supreme Court that ruled in Roe v. Wade. Look it up. Fact check me. Now, I'm not getting into politics here, because this is not a political broadcast. The pulpit is not a political place, but we can discuss things like that here on MTZCAST, and it's one of the reasons that we have this little video cast from time to time, to speak about these issues from a Christian perspective, a biblical perspective. Concerning abortion, I don't think that I have to defend the pro-life position on MTZCAST, because I think those that watch this are largely pro-life. That being said, before I formed thee in the womb, I knew thee. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. John the Baptist, when he was yet in his mother's womb, leapt for joy when Mary, the mother of Christ, came into the room. A baby yet to be born leapt for joy in his mother's womb at the presence of Christ. Biblically, life begins at conception. What did David say in the Psalms when he lamented his sin with Bathsheba? He says that he was conceived in sin and shapen in iniquity. Sin begins at conception. And therefore, we are sinners from conception. We are us from conception. I am me from conception. There's no doubt, biblically, that life begins at conception if you actually know the Bible. Now, there are a lot of arguments that were thrown at me yesterday. I devoted a substantial portion of my day yesterday to debating this, arguing this online with people, and I don't do that often. It isn't something that I enjoy. I used to spend a lot of time involved in politics. I love to debate it. But I think that as ministers, when we spend so much time screaming about whatever right or left-wing political idea is being debated that week, whatever talking point the media tells us to think about and argue about, I think we lose credibility as gospel preachers. There's only so much that a person is going to endure in terms of listening and critical thinking. I can only influence so much, in other words. And if I can only influence so much, well then, by all means, I'm going to try to influence in the gospel. I'm not going to waste my time or influence on issues that are not gospel issues. And mark my word, abortion is a gospel issue. This is a church issue. This is a Bible issue. This is a moral issue. This is the greatest war of our time for the church to wage in America today. Now, concerning some abortion facts, I want to give you some of the disagreements with this and just share some of the thoughts with you that others threw at me, and the defense, the debate that I had back against them. But concerning the scope of abortion, people think it's something that's rare. It really doesn't happen a lot. You're taking away a woman's right. And they like to focus on the 1% of cases that are just absolutely heartbreaking and ignore the 98 to 99% of the cases where the mom just killed the baby out of convenience. You know, sacrificing your baby on the altar of convenience. So in 1981, what happened in 1981? I was born in 1981. There were 3,529,238 live births. There were 1,300,760 abortions. These numbers come from the CDC. We're not making this up. This doesn't come from some nutty conspiracy theorist. And so out of the 4,829,998 pregnancies, 26.9 ended in abortion, according to those numbers. This means that more than 1/4 of people my age died in abortion. Is that not heartbreaking? You know, people think, well, it's a woman's right. I don't agree with it, but it's a woman's right. No, it is not your right to murder your child. It is not. There is a hell. There is a hell, and it is real. Now, please understand, a lot of women do this because they are scared, because they are brainwashed, because they don't know any better, and they are made to think by these Planned Parenthood people that this is just a clump of cells. It isn't a person. Now, I lost children in 2009 in the second trimester. They were about that long. I held them in my hand. I lost 2 twin boys. They were babies A and baby B. We named them Aaron and Brent for A and B. I dug the hole at the cemetery. I put them in a little jewelry box that we bought at Hobby Lobby, and we laid them in the ground, okay? Those were human beings. They were babies. You know how offensive it is to those of us who have lost children to tell us those aren't babies. It's just a clump of cells. Tell that to any mama who miscarries. A friend of mine reminded me on social media today that 1/4 of pregnancies end in miscarriage. Think of the heartbreak that a mom experiences. She's not crying because she lost the potential of a child. She's crying because she lost a child. Any of you that's ever been there, you know the pain of that. But Planned Parenthood tricks these women, deceives them into thinking that this is not a child. It's just a clump of cells. Well, you're just a clump of cells. What's the difference in you and the baby? We're all clumps of cells, so to speak. No, don't hand me that. That might have tricked people, deceived people before we had these 3D ultrasounds. But I've seen the ultrasounds of my 5 living children. I have seen them come into the world. I've cut the cord of the 2 girls. I was at the point of fainting with the 3 boys because I pass out when Rachel has kids. I know that these are babies. I know what they look like before and after. They're babies. And this idea of abortion is the greatest evil of our time. 1 in 4 babies died the year I was born by abortion. 1/4 of people my age died in an abortion. Ironically enough, yesterday there was a news story that came out, and it was that since the 1970s, Americans have not been birthing enough children to maintain our culture. This is one of the reasons we're all afraid of Social Security going bankrupt. Well, why do you think that is? Now, I know there are other reasons like birth control, people get married later, etc. But again, let's scroll down here and reread this number. In 1981, 1,300,760 people died in an abortion. Carrying that number through the years, you're talking about tens of millions of people. What would that have done to the nation's population? We literally slaughtered our future. We slaughtered our future. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, musicians, statesmen, moms and dads. We killed them. We killed them. You know, when we all watched Infinity War, go back to Marvel, when Thanos snaps his finger, half the human race evaporates. There were people who sat weeping over the death of a fictional character in those theaters, who then turn around and support abortion when literally nearly as many human beings have died in abortion. A quarter of people my age. A quarter. It's not half. Okay, so it's half of what Thanos did. And yet, when you post that, they attack you. Speaking of the attacks, man, I was made to think of Psalm 2. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? And I know that that psalm is a messianic psalm. I know that it is speaking of the Lord Jesus. I know that. That is very much a messianic psalm. But the concept of the heathen raging, boy, that is going on right now in the world. They are raging. I've never seen so many people throwing irate tantrums because they were no longer granted the legality of murdering their children. Imagine the degree. I've been unfriended on Facebook. And I take that, hey, that's a badge of honor. If you unfriended me because of that, at least you saw it. At least you got to hear that what you did was wrong. That's a part of what we do as gospel preachers. We tell people that they do wrong. And I shared the status with a GIF file of the cowboy with the mustache and the hat, and he says, well, bye. That's about how I feel about it. You know where the door is, but don't say that you went through this life without someone warning you. There is wrath coming over this. This does not happen without consequence. People are raging. All right, let's go spend just a few minutes looking at some of the arguments that I received. By the way, when this was at the governor's discretion, I was so worried. I mentioned that earlier, and I rambled off that subject. But I was worried that she wasn't going to sign it. I was afraid. So I called. I said, Miss Ivy, and I got a receptionist. I said, there are thousands of people, if this bill stands, and it may not. Supreme Court may strike it down. They may neglect to hear it and leave it with the lower court that strikes it down. And there are a lot of commentators who think that's the way it's going to go. But if this stands, there are thousands and thousands of people, Miss Ivy, who will thank you because they will have a chance to live life. They would have never known life if abortion was legal. Planned Parenthood doesn't want you to know that. The large majority of those are African Americans. They're black folks. Margaret Sanger, look up some of the quotes, the legitimate sourced quotes, racist quotes about eliminating more and more black people from our society through abortion. Why do you think Planned Parenthood always seeks out a facility in African American neighborhoods, in black neighborhoods? Why? Because they may not know it, but their founder wanted eugenics to commit genocide against people of color. It makes me sick. It makes me sick. So when I made some posts about this yesterday, all human life is precious. That was Governor Kay Ivey prior to signing this, and I wrote that in quotes and simply wrote amen on local news article for Channel 48. One person comes out, especially those children separated at the border, huh? Right? Now, her point was to try to insinuate that I want to mistreat people at the border. That isn't what I want. So I said, yep, even the children separated at the border. All human beings are deserving of dignity and respect and should be treated as such. Why? Because we're made in God's image. That's why it's not right to kill a human, but it's permissible to eat a cow. If you don't believe in God, you have no standard at all. There is no definitive standard whereby you can say this is moral and this is immoral. You have no standard. We're clumps of cells. We're stardust. We're matter that somehow obtained consciousness. If we're all here or none of us are here, nothing matters. And then some other woman comes out, but not pregnant people, huh? Well, no, they should be treated with dignity and respect too. They just shouldn't be allowed to murder their babies. And every time you post this, you've got all these women that come out clicking ha-ha and angry. And someone says, including those who rape. No. No, people who rape are wicked, wicked criminals. Now, what they are in the sight of God, God knows. But if you rape a woman, I've said this on MTZCAST before. I've said it in the pulpit. If you rape a woman, you forfeit your right to live. In Ben Winslet's world, you rape a woman, you are gone. You molest a child, you are gone. You murder somebody, that should be the death sentence. Government is to be a terror to evil. You don't terrorize evil by treating it the way that we do in this country. We have a very lawless society. People continued. You mentioned the fact that 98% of people that get abortions do so not because of rape, but because of convenience. And they begin to scream and yell at you that the statistics are fake. It's fake news. Can I channel Alex Jones? Fake news. It's a shame. So then some people come out speaking about children that are victims of rape. And I want to make this point before we end our video cast for today. I despise rape. And people get twisting this emotionally, trying to, to throw this in any of our faces, who oppose the abortion of a child that was conceived by rape. That child did nothing wrong. I hate what happened to the mother. The very fact that we call the mother ought to tell you something. I hate rape. I want rapists to be executed. And I think if we did, there'd be less rapists. But the child did nothing wrong. Don't execute the child. Execute the man who did it. Now, this didn't get passed, but hey, we want to pass some more state programs. I'll pay more taxes to take care of babies who are the product of that. I'll open my home. You got a baby that needs a place to live? Well, you just drop it off at the Winslet residence. I'll take it in. I'll take it in. But all of that's a deflection, because they want you to take your eyes off what's actually happening. Is a baby's being murdered. A baby is being murdered. Someone came out with the one I was waiting for, the straw man argument. Abortion is not allowed because it's against God's law. Yes, the God who ordered babies to be slaughtered killed the firstborn in Egypt and caused an entire race to drown. First of all, that's God's righteous vengeance. The person who would post something like that reveals that their heart feels no conviction of sin at all. They have no reverence for God. They don't realize that we all deserve death at the hand of God, because he's the righteous judge. He is holy. See, that's a problem of authority. They dare question God's authority. We are all we like sheep have gone astray. Every single one of us, good people, God's people, and the wicked, all of us. We're all sinners. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We're all sinners. We all deserve God's wrath. And so they deflect, it's okay for me to kill my baby because God punished the world in the days of Noah. And because God destroyed the world, I should be able to kill my baby. Or you at least shouldn't criticize me on religious grounds if I do murder my baby. And it reveals that they have absolutely no understanding of the biblical concept of judgment and justice. It is sad that humankind was so desperately wicked that the earth was filled with violence, and so God flooded it. But whose fault is that? It's not God's fault. It's our fault. It's terribly tragic when a man murders someone and is given the death penalty, but he's given what he deserves. when God judges the world, God is not unjust in his judgment of this world. God forbid. He's the only just judge in existence. God executed perfect judgment. And rather than scoffing at him, people ought to be trembling at that. Because the God that judged the world in the days of Noah is going to judge the world again. People ought to tremble at it. Instead, they shake their fist and they scoff. Why? Because they are reprobate. The word reprobate means void of judgment. Sad. It's tragic. There's a clock that you can go to that continually ticks and shows you the number of abortions, the number of people that are aborted around the world. And every few seconds, it clicks off another 3 or 4, just boom, 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 boom. It's a modern-day Holocaust. It's tragic, and it's sad. So as we close today, and we'll be brief, what should be our response from here on out? Number one, we need to present a calm, rational, logical, biblical apologetic. And that's what I tried to do all day yesterday. The Acts 17 marketplace is the internet, Twitter, Facebook. But number two, especially those of us in the state of Alabama and the state of Georgia, after the recent heartbeat bill there's going to be a lot of babies now who would have been aborted if this stands. Our job as the body of Christ is to do what? What is pure religion? James 1. To visit the fatherless and the widow in their affliction. I would charge every single one of us to step up like we've never stepped up before. There are thousands of children in the foster care system in our country. Thousands. There are orphans today. Step up. Be the first century church. Love people. Care for them. Provide for the poor. Turn loose of all the extravagance and excess that we have in our comfortable, gated community lives. And care for those who can't care for themselves. Well, thank you for watching MTZCAST Episode 14 today. Got to go to a funeral in a minute. A little more dressed up than we usually are. Be sure to leave me a comment. Let me know that you watched. Get out there and make a difference in this world. Argue for the faith. Contend for the faith once delivered to the saints. Stand for biblical principles. And be so Christ-like that the enemy has no criticism of us when it comes to the way we actually do care for the poor. And I know so very many of you are doing an excellent job at that, and I commend you in the Lord for that. Until next time, again, I'm Ben Winslet. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and see you soon.